There are only two kinds of books, good books and bad books, and we like the good ones. Today on the Life on Books podcast, Andy and I are going to get to the bottom of who is the bigger book snob, myself or him. This idea was precipitated by a couple of comments we've received over the last year or so, but I think more recently, somebody left a Spotify comment, which it's still funny to me that Spotify even has comments. Somebody said that Andy seems pretty cool, but Tony seems like a know-it-all, kind of smug. And Andy was offended.
Kind of. That's what I was offended about, that they said kind of smug.
Oh.
No.
So we've curated, or I've curated a list of prompts to screen us for our pretentiousness.
Yeah.
And we've also polled some people in our group, and I went to Instagram as well to find out which types of questions you would ask somebody to really identify how big of a book snob they are. So at the end of this episode, share your opinion. Who is the more pretentious reader? Who has better taste? And which one of us is the bigger asshole?
Just want to balance out the till here a little bit.
Okay.
You've gotten that comment on Spotify. We've also gotten comments on YouTube.
Yes.
Directed to me being a snob.
Do you have that one that you read? The one that
buddy,
you shared last
night.
night. Andy has this one queued up. I think it's his proudest moment.
It's basically like my pilot light. Like it just guides me. It's my North Star.
Yeah.
This was I don't even remember what what episode this was a comment on.
Yeah, I don't recall either.
We got this comment on YouTube. I love how Andy is the most cliche lit bro. It's almost like he has purposely manufactured his taste and aesthetic to max out his lit broness. I'm eagerly awaiting for his next 5-star read to be a book that has 1,400 pages of a single sentence repeating the same word published by the most obscure publishing house.
You like what you like,
and
folks.
honestly, like I've read this so many times, I don't know if that's supposed to be an insult or like a compliment or what it's supposed to be, because parts of it aren't wrong.
So
like
I'm a true believer in the idea that social media is supposed to be social. So I try to do my best to engage with comments on any platform that I post to. But I mean, there's so many at this point, it's hard to keep up. So I'll usually just give like a heart react,
Yeah.
And sometimes when I see one like that, I'm like, I don't know. Is this an insult? What is this? Like, I'm not sure. But it is funny.
Yeah.
So let's start with our weekly reading update before we find out how big of lit bro dicks we are. And of course, you can put yourself through the same tests as we go along here. But what have you been reading since this is a shorter duration between recordings than typical for us. So
the same two, the Chandelier,
Yeah.
the Lispector, and Gesell Dome by Guillermo Saccomanno.
Mm-hmm.
And against my better judgment, I also started reading Seiobo There Below by László Krasznahorkai.
Cool.
Which is a short story collection.
Nice.
Just about kind of the beauty of everyday life and things like that. It's a very generalized description. There's more in depth. Look it up. I don't remember.
Sure.
But I've only read a couple of the stories. The first one was like beautiful. It was about like a white heron just kind of in this river, like hanging out, hunting its dinner, and watching out for fish, and how cranes its neck, and it's long and slender, and its beak is right there in the water, and then it just grabs the fish out of the water, and how like this everyday moment is so beautiful unless you're like specifically paying attention to that instance, you're gonna miss all of it.
I think Andy's score of pretentiousness is already rising here,
buddy,
folks.
Yeah. So, and then before you get into your reading recap, I want to make a slight correction. This is going to bring me down a peg on the pretentiousness, because I am going to correct myself.
Mm-hmm.
When we recorded the other day, and I was talking about the last scrapbook, and I mentioned the origin story of it, about how Dara just sent the manuscript one day and it just like showed up on William Volman's doorstep. I was slightly off. It was Richard Powers that was the recipient of the manuscript.
He's the one that wrote the Overstory?
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha.
But kind of the same, the origin story is very similar. Dara just like randomly mailed the manuscript to a well-known author.
Cool.
I just had the author wrong. So
Gotcha. All right. So I have been still reading A Naked Singularity and Moby Dick. I did want to bring out my beautiful Penguin Deluxe edition of Moby Dick. I think it's probably one of the cooler looking editions of it. And of course, the classic A Naked Singularity with the, I don't know, swirly design that if you stare at it long enough, you'll see an image of Cormac McCarthy appear. And I've also been still going through The Writing of America by Jeff Ward, which is about over my intellectual ability, actually. Jeff is a very smart person, and I don't understand half of what he's saying in that book. And then I was like, geez, I'm kind of working my way through I just finished Matterhorn, which is a 608-page book. Moby Dick's over 600 pages. A Naked Singularity is over 600 pages. The Writing of America is not 600 pages, but it's very dense. And I was like, I need something just like shorter and easier to read for a moment.
Yeah.
So I picked up God Went Like That by Yxta Maya Murray. And it's kind of like an epistolary. It's I think it's heavily based in reality, but it is a fiction about like a nuclear reactor disaster that was kind of covered up by the U.S. government because they would never do something like that.
That's we definitely know it's fiction.
Yeah. But this is from Northwestern University Press.
Cool.
And they published Paranoia by Viktor Martinovich, which was the first book I read this year. And I really liked it. And so I read
2 pretentious points to you for University Press publication
Yeah.
and properly pronouncing that name correctly. Because that's
who knows? I could be wrong.
you attempted it confidently. We'll put it that way.
Somebody keep score in the show notes.
Does YouTube have an option like if you post something on Instagram, you can do the poll or like you can vote?
I don't know.
Does YouTube have that? Like, can we put can we pin a comment like vote below for?
I'll have to look into that.
Tony or Andy.
If they do, I'll definitely use it. So, but I'm only 20 pages in. I started it last night just before I went to bed. It's really good so far. So I think she's a university professor and a journalist. So
cool.
Okay, so who
Let's do
is the bigger book snob?
Let the battle begin.
So this I broke this down into 4 different categories. So there's just like general questions that I kind of found just by poking around the internet.
Yeah.
There's this or that.
Okay.
There's gun to your head, this or that. So they're like more like negative in their connotation, or like more like we would rather do neither, but we have to pick one.
We have to pick one. Okay.
A pretentiousness checklist of books that we may or may not have read, and then we have questions from our community.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's just start with some of these general broad questions that I put together from searching the web. Which authors, and you can name more than one, are you proud of having not read?
Authors am I proud of having not read?
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, like I don't.
Come on.
Okay, well, like here's the thing. Like probably authors that would fall under that category, like I know so little about that I don't even like. I mean, I guess the what's her name that wrote like Fourth Wing or the Court of whatever and whatever.
I believe A Court of Thorn and Roses is Sarah J. Moss.
Yeah.
And then Fourth Wing is Rebecca Yarros, I believe.
Yeah.
I probably am losing pretentiousness points by knowing that.
Here's where I'm going to be a pedantic asshole.
Okay.
Like, it's not that I'm proud of having never read them.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't care at all. Like,
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But I think that's a little different. So, like,
again, that's why I said I'm going to be a pedantic. Like,
I mean, you haven't read any Franzen.
I'm proud I have not read any Franzen.
Okay. Is there anyone else akin to that you can think of, like kind of
Easton Ellis.
Fair enough. Okay.
Those are the two that immediately come to mind.
For myself, I would probably say Brandon Sanderson.
Okay. That's fair.
And I don't necessarily have anything against Brandon Sanderson, but it's like he's one of those authors that when people reach out to me in DMs or whatever for anything at all, there's a lot of times this assumption that I have, like everyone's read Sanderson.
Yeah.
And it's just like, nah, like it's just not my thing.
Right.
I just have zero desire to.
Yeah. Now that you've said Sanderson and like have qualified it as to like everyone assumes that you've read Sanderson just because he's like a well-known author, and oh my God, everyone's read. I sort of feel the same way about Stephen King, and not as like a negative towards King, because there are some of his earlier works, when he was a real coke fiend, that would probably be entertaining to read.
Yeah.
And I don't mean any of this to sound like I never want to read any Stephen King.
Yeah.
But like I haven't read anything. So when everyone's read, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
I actually, my brain is just so big that I skipped a couple grades and went from.
I also have not read Stephen King, but I would not say I'm proud of having not read him because I do want to read some of his books.
Yeah. Like I said, I would like to read some Stephen King, and I'm not necessarily proud that I haven't read any of his books yet. But when everyone kind of assumes like, oh, you're a big reader, you've read Stephen King? Nope.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a few more for me too, but I can't. I tried not to like think of these or like look at these too closely beforehand because I didn't want to have an unfair advantage of having, thought on them.
I got when we were taking questions from the community on Discord, like I got a good laugh at pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
I only prepared for one of the questions.
Cool. Being unprepared is the life on books way.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. Who do you think is the most overrated author in the world of literature?
Wow.
And so we'll kind of be pretentious here and separate out like genre fiction.
Yeah.
We won't touch that, but like literature.
Before I answer, is that just a question you came up with yourself? Or is that okay?
Yeah.
Who is the most overrated in literature? Dostoevsky is like the first that comes to mind. And probably others from that time period. Some of the old Russians or just like classics in general. Again, overrated always has this like negative connotation of, oh, you think that person's not good.
Right.
No, I think Dostoevsky is a fantastic writer and has at least Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground are really the only 2 novels that I've read at length. And I enjoyed both of those. And there is a reason that, I mean, those books were published in what? The
late
like
1800s, yeah.
Almost like they're almost as old as the Civil War.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about them frequently.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. But there are also people that talk about Crime and Punishment and the Brothers K and whatever as if nobody has written a single book since those were published.
I definitely think Dostoevsky is like baby's first literature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's the kind of the most obvious. If you're going to go search literature on TikTok or Instagram, it's just like the first thing that's going to pop up.
Yeah.
People talk about it like it's the most profound thing of all time.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit like, I guess for me personally, when I am looking for something on social media, I want like something that's a little bit of like the less obvious choice.
Yep.
A good example of that is those satirical, non-political book videos I do. Every single one, people are like, you forgot 1984. And it's like, yes, 1984 is the most like obviously political book ever written. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the one book where if you pulled somebody off the street and you said, name the most political book you can think of, they'd say 1984. It's
Right.
like, yes, everyone knows 1984 is a very political book. It's not funny to satirize it because of that. Like
Right.
it's too obvious.
Right.
But I would agree with you on the overrated for Dostoevsky. I would personally probably also put Cormac McCarthy on that list. To be fair, I've only read 2 of his books.
Yeah.
One of them being All the Pretty Horses, which is, I think, one of his more kind of like critically acclaimed. And you know what? I liked it. It wasn't like this sucks.
Right.
But people talk about it like it changes their life. And if it does, that's awesome. Like that's the point of books. And I'm glad that happened to you. But like, I'm just like, all right.
So I've read 4, 5 McCarthy books.
Yep.
I think he is, for the most part, appropriately rated.
Okay. I mean, there are people that believe he's the greatest American writer.
And I think I don't agree with that,
Okay.
but I understand why people make that argument.
Sure.
And I think, assuming it's made well,
Yeah.
that they've got points.
Yeah.
I would argue back that he's a sexual predator and child trafficker.
I mean, that sucks. But I am going to separate the art from the artist here and just say like, even before I even had any idea that was even a thing, because apparently that was kind of a well or known open secret. When we read All the Pretty Horses and did a podcast episode about it, I had zero idea.
I didn't have a clue.
It was not on my radar at all.
Yeah.
And I still was just like, yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, backtracking a little bit, I actually just thought of another author that I would say I'm proud of not having read, which is Karl Knausgaard or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even be bothered to know how to say his name. So
Knausgaard.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Knausgaard.
Point.
Well, someone might fact check you. We'll see.
Fight you if you try to fact check me.
So I think that's another author, certainly to a much lesser degree than Dostoevsky, that like is kind of like if you go search highbrow literature, particularly more contemporary stuff.
Yeah.
He's an author that's going to pop up a lot, and people rant and rave about how beautiful his writing is. I purchased the first volume of 7 of My Struggle, and I think I read about 10 pages of it, and I was like, I don't know about this. And then I like did a little bit more reading about the guy, and it turns out that at this point, this dude has written tens of thousands of pages about himself.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this guy's the Paris Hilton of literature, which you might be too young to remember this, but like Paris Hilton was kind of like the first real celebrity to be like famous for being famous.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm aware.
All right.
I'm not that much younger than you.
I mean, 10 years, it's or so, it's enough. But like, I'm just like, what?
But a lot of our cultural phenomena have overlapped.
Sure. We're both millennials. So, and I'm like, this guy is like kind of famous. He's a famous writer for being a famous writer. It's like, I don't know. It just, some people make an argument for like that level of self-indulgence, but it's just too much for me.
Yeah.
And, so now it's kind of more of a funny meme for myself to be like,
I'm gonna
I've
go
never
back
read that guy.
and add a couple, because when I said Dostoevsky and you were like, he's kind of baby's first literature. I'm gonna go back and add a couple authors to my overrated list.
Okay.
Hemingway.
Oof. All right.
And F. Scott Fitzgerald.
I haven't read anything other than The Great Gatsby, and I read it in high school. So is he overrated? Like I couldn't even begin to say.
But that's kind of like, I made this joke when we recorded the other day.
Yeah.
Like, let's base your personality around a book, on something other than a book you were assigned in high school.
Yeah.
I think there are, and I kind of alluded to people that use being literary as, being performative.
Yeah.
They make their literacy, an act and kind of make it part of their aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I think the Venn diagram of people that romanticize being literate and say The Great Gatsby is their favorite book, it's probably not a circle, but it's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
So
it's akin to a 17-year-old saying the Holden Caulfield book. What the fuck called?
Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's like, every 17-year-old said that was their favorite book when they read it in high school.
Well, it's like the bar scene in Good Will Hunting. Of course that's your opinion. You're a first-year grad student.
Right.
Like, come on.
Andy will use any opportunity to mention Good Will Hunting that comes across his plate.
I swallowed a bug.
And we should put a disclaimer on this whole thing. We should have done this at the beginning, that we joke a lot about being pretentious, and of course we think we have good taste, but ultimately neither of us really give a shit what other people are reading. You know what I mean? Just people get mad about it, and I get it. You see oh, there's lights and cameras and they have some followers on YouTube, but it doesn't matter. We're just two random knuckleheads.
Two more white dudes with a podcast.
Just two more white dudes with a podcast. Okay. So, what would you say is your most controversial book-related opinion? Some of these are kind of overlapping a little bit.
Yeah.
Out of the gate, I have publicly stated I think Dostoevsky is a little overrated, and that usually gets people all up in their feelings.
I was gonna say, I think the last 10 minutes that we've just been rambling could probably be pretty controversial.
Yeah. We can come back to that if you want.
I'm trying to think of how to formulate it into a 1 or 2 sentence actual opinion.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first got onto Bookstagram and was a little bit more active and things like that, and would see all the plenty of the creators that prefer the romance and fantasy type books, which again, cool, read whatever you like.
Yeah.
But making these reels about how they're the best books ever written, they're objectively not.
Sure. Yeah.
If you read whatever you like.
Yeah.
But
your opinion is objectively wrong. Yeah, that's a controversial take,
so
I think.
Kind of that's where I'm at. I think it's cool that you are reading frequently, whatever you like. I'm just an idiot. If the books I'm recommending don't sound good to you, don't read them. I'm not going to read the books you're recommending because they don't sound great. But your opinion about them being the greatest is wrong.
Yeah, I would say that's a controversial way to put it. I don't know if this is the most inflammatory, or I don't think these are the most inflammatory opinions I have, but I would say things I generally don't think books being written now are as good as books written 70 years ago, 100 years ago. This also gets people really up in their feelings. I think counting the number of books you read is kind of not worth it. And I think really focusing on achieving a specific number is very dumb.
Yeah.
If you count how many books you read as just kind of a fun, I read 20 books this month or whatever, that's fine. But the people who are I read 50 this year and next year it's going to be 100.
Right.
And then they're just hammering just to hit that number. I think that is...
my goal was to read 100 and I only read 98. So I have to do double my therapy for the next 3 months so I can get over how much of a failure I am.
Yeah. I think it's completely defeats the purpose of reading.
Yeah.
And I say that acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of different reasons why people read.
Yeah.
I don't care what your reason for reading is. If that's what you do, it's defeating the purpose of reading.
I think a specific number, books read goal is helpful for people that are, trying to get back into reading, or at least can be. If you've haven't read a book since high school and you're I'm going to challenge myself to read 12 books this year. Then you do that.
Right.
And then you double it.
Right.
And you kind of use the number of books read goal as like a tool to help you kind of get back into the habit of being a reader. Great.
Mm-hmm. Beyond that,
once you hit kind of like, you know, because I've done the 50 plus, I've hit that number. I've hit 100 plus. I feel like those are the two kind of your max. Like after that, it's just arbitrary.
Yeah.
You know. I did think of another controversial opinion.
Oh boy, here we go.
It's going to set the internet on fire.
Buckle up. He's going to say this with his full chest.
Audiobooks don't count as reading.
Oh God, here we go. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because we'll be there forever. So, that is a controversial take. Okay. Tally up his points on that one, folks. What is a book that you actually hated but felt pressured to like? I would probably put The Brothers K on that list for me. I read half of it. I didn't like it enough to finish.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I felt pressured to like it, although maybe like early on in kind of talking about books on the internet, I shied away from mentioning that because people, it's like sacrilegious to say that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because I can say pretty confidently there haven't been any books that I've disliked or hated that I felt pressured to be like, actually, I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. Because if I didn't like a book, like I'm going to be honest with you and say that I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then never talk about it again.
Yeah.
Because who cares? Life's too short to talk about books you didn't like. Unless it's Duck's Newburyport.
Bink.
But I'm sure there are books, and this is what I'm trying to think of. I'm sure there are books that I've enjoyed, thought were good, not great, but because of hype on the internet, I felt compelled to be like, that was great.
Mm. Can you think of any by name?
There was part of me, both of or two of Karl Rescue's books, Blinded and Solenoid.
Mm-hmm.
I thought both of them were like really good, really, really phenomenal books. But and a little bit less so with Solenoid because I bought it when it was at its I guess I could say when the hype was at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just didn't get around to reading it for a year. So I felt a little bit less influenced when I was talking about it and my enjoyment of it. And granted, I didn't make any long posts about anything like that, but I read Blinding when there was a lot of hype around Carter Rescue Online. And I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And there are certainly parts of the book where Carter Rescue's writing is incredible.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, I haven't thought much about it since I read it. And like I said, it's a really good book.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say anything negative about it. I just think I kind of was influenced by the hype a little bit and let that affect, maybe artificially boost my enjoyment. Is a better way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Brothers K, I would maybe also add, well, actually one that comes to mind is Carpentaria by Alexis Wright. And I think one of the reasons why I felt pressured to maybe not claim I loved it, but obscure the fact that I didn't love it was that we were reading it for the book club.
Right.
And I was just not enjoying it enough to finish it.
Yeah.
And so I felt like a responsibility to the community. But everyone was cool about it. And I also don't want my opinion on something to, in that instance, influence other people.
Right.
This isn't me being like, oh, I'm an influencer. But I think when you have relationships with other people, no matter how big their audience are, or what kind of authority you might think that they are, other people's opinions can sway how you feel. So, if people were enjoying the book during the book club read, I didn't want to like rain on their parade. You know what I mean? I didn't want them to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't like this book because Tony thinks it sucks.
Right. You want to have a nuanced conversation about why you're not enjoying it. You don't want to just like hop on the weekly Zoom call and then be like, book sucks.
Right. So, okay. How is your bookshelf organized? I think you can tell a lot about somebody by how they organize their bookshelf. I believe you do it by color. Is that correct?
Some of it is organized, some of it is not.
Oh,
I know yours is largely alphabetical. At least the fiction section is.
so I can quickly go over.
Yeah,
how
you do
mine is.
yours first, because
So I have a nonfiction and a fiction section.
yeah,
The nonfiction is organized roughly by what type of nonfiction it is.
yeah.
So anything like history related is just, it's categorized by what thing in history it's talking about. So there's World War I, World War II.
I mean, it just makes sense if you have 6 books about the Korean War to put them all together.
Right. And then like memoirs are all in, biographies are on one section. And then fiction is just straight alphabetical by author name.
Yeah.
Although I am debating changing that because at this point I do have so many books specifically from like Open Letter, from NYRB, from Penguin, that I'm toying with the idea of organizing it by publisher, which I think is a little more pretentious.
So, well, let's get ready to put a point up in my tally for me, because I have some shelves that are not my entire collection library, but I have a number of different parts of my collection that are organized by publisher. Within those shelves themselves, originally I had set out to organize them alphabetically. All of my Dalkey books were alphabetical by author together. And then as those collections grow, it just kind of fell apart with like actually making the effort to like reorganize every time I got a new book plus I'm also limited by space. So sometimes, I just put one on top of the row and then I have others that are sort of organized by like publication period. Like I have a shelf that's like a little bit more modern. So like all my Wallace, Volman, Levin are all kind of together. A little bit, again, another shelf that's kind of more contemporary. So like all of my De La Pava, Ed Park, Esker David Johnson, books that are more, I don't say late 21st century because it's certainly not late, but like within the last decade and a half, give or take.
Yeah.
And then, like I have like an entire pension shelf, and then below that, Gaddis, Gass, Robert Coover, like I try to like put similar authors and, authors and their contemporaries together.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's no real organization,
Cool.
So.
All right. Moving on. Have you ever said the statement, plot isn't really important to me?
Multiple times, like so many times.
How do you
actually? What I have said is the plot is not the point.
That is true. That is exactly what you've said.
But I do care about plot. I do care. Like,
I mean, if a book is supposed to have a plot, I care about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
I don't need a good plot, but I enjoy one.
Yeah.
If everything else about the book is good and great,
sure.
Maybe I don't need a strict narrative, but like,
how do you feel about genre fiction?
Couldn't care less.
Okay. I certainly don't like go out of my way to read it. Like if there's a book in the category of a specific genre of fiction that interests me, cool, but I'm not like, I love sci-fi. I love Westerns. I don't think that way, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it than my just like single sentence. Like I've enjoyed I mean, Warlock is a Western. We've covered it before. There are a handful of Westerns that I've liked.
Yeah.
A couple of sci-fis that I've liked. But I'm not like going out of my way to look for those things specifically.
The absolute hands down worst book you've ever read to completion.
Do you have an answer? Because I got to think about this.
I would probably say The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good one.
Sorry to Becca who gifted me that book. She was much younger then. She was, maybe 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And she kindly was like, I think it was a birthday gift, which was a very, kind gesture. But she was like, this is my favorite book. And I was like, cool. And I read it and I was like, what the is this?
Yeah.
But her and I have kind of talked about it since then. And she's like, yeah, I was young at that point.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good answer.
Are you scrolling through your...
I'm scrolling through to see, because there are, the books I've marked read.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, neither of us really finish books we don't like.
If I had that strong of opinion about like, oh, this book sucks, then I wouldn't have finished it.
I mean, I would... certainly not the worst book, but a book that's highly rated that I absolutely hated.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot, is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
1920s Seinfeld without the comedy. I say it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, The Alchemist is a good one, because I've read it twice, actually, in my life. And I remember the first time, I was probably like 17 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't know anything about the world. You haven't had any sort of life experience. Everything in that book seems...
very profound.
Very profound. And then I remember I read it again, like early 20s. And, had enough life experience to be like, maybe this isn't the answer.
Yeah.
But not enough experience to like still find some meaning in the book. And then as I've just moved on, I'm like, no, that was just platitudes after platitude. I won't say this was not like the worst book I've ever actually finished, but and unfortunately I can't remember the name of the author, but Open Letter published it. And I hate to say this because I love Open Letter and Chad Post. Not Even the Dead, which came out a couple years ago, I thought was...
Is that Gomez? Is that the author's name?
That sounds right. It is a Mexican author.
Okay.
At least Latin American.
Yep.
Like, it was such a strong novel, and I was enjoying it so much. And then I absolutely hated the ending, and it kind of ruined the experience for me. I won't like spoil it too much, or try not to spoil it at all. But you know how like the other day we were talking about how a pet peeve of ours is when authors just like throw modern day stuff into novels. It was something like that. There was something a very, very polarizing.
Yeah,
I should say, I guess is the best way to put it without really spoiling anything. Modern day reference that I felt was very ham-fisted and unnecessary.
That sucks.
And just really took me out of the book. But I wouldn't say it was like the word. Like I said, it was a very well written book, and I thought it was very strong. Even the particular, the sections that I didn't like what was happening in the narrative, like they were well written. It was just the things that were being written about affected my enjoyment.
Next question. What is the best book that you've read that was published in the last 18 months? So this from the start of 2024 on. This is a tough one. I'm going through my story graph because I can't even think of a book that I've read that came out in that time period.
Yeah, right? I can't either.
I guess just maybe by default, The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's a nonfiction.
Yeah. Does it count if it was published like like the English publication.
Well, I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Okay. Then it would be Marshland by
Okay.
Orihiko Kaga.
All right. Which is a book that was originally written in 1985.
Yeah.
Cool.
You could also do the same thing about the Case of Gem by Vera Mudashiva, which the English was published in 2024. The original Bulgarian, same thing, like sometime in the 80s, I believe. 70. Let's see, 76 is like the 70s.
I've read a couple nonfictions actually that are 2024 and beyond.
Yeah.
Vulture Capitalism by Grace Blakely.
Yep. The only book that I've read in the last 18 months that was published originally in the last 18 months was Every Arc Bends Its Radian by Sergio de la Pava.
All right. So that's the winner for you,
But
I guess.
if we're allowing works that were published in English in the last 18 months, but originally written outside of those.
Yeah, when you picked a book that was written in 1985, I regretted allowing it.
Yeah. I think that's the point for me, right? That's
yeah, probably.
What's the favorite?
I don't know how the scoring works.
What's
all
your
right?
favorite book that was published in the last 18 months? One that was published 4 decades ago.
What's the last lit crit book that you read?
Lit crit book that I read.
I'm currently reading one right
Yeah,
now.
you're currently
So
reading one right now.
big points for me.
Probably would have been something about pension.
Did you read that one about Bolaño and Savage Detectives?
I did. Yes.
Okay, was that the most recent one?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Savage Detectives reread by an author who I can't remember.
All right. +1 pretentious point for reading that, and -1 for not remembering the author's name.
I also started while I was at home on the Cape recovering. I didn't end up finishing it, and I haven't really picked it up recently. But I had started Vineland reread
Oh, cool.
by Peter Cavillio.
Nice. All right. On to the this or that.
Oh boy.
These are kind of just general. Dostoevsky or Tolstoy?
Dostoevsky, only because I've read more of him than Tolstoy.
I'm going Tolstoy.
So
Hemingway or Steinbeck?
Steinbeck.
That's an easy one. The Great Gatsby or To Kill a Mockingbird?
oh,
I've read both. I barely remember either. So I'll just go with To Kill a Mockingbird.
I feel like I've criticized Gatsby too much to not in the last 2 episodes to not pick To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, that would be my choice regardless.
Sure.
But I feel like I am also compelled to make it at this point.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to seem like a flip-flopper.
Right.
The Odyssey or Beowulf? I'm going Beowulf.
I'm going to the same thing. I have Homeric epics too much to pick one of them.
Orwell or Huxley?
Huxley.
Same. Lord of the Flies or Animal Farm?
Animal Farm.
Same. The Metamorphosis or The Stranger? That's a tough one. I'm going to go The Stranger.
I've only read The Stranger.
Okay. Metamorphosis is like 70 pages, 60 pages. I don't know. You should read it.
I should.
Faulkner or Joyce? I'm going Faulkner.
I've never read any Faulkner, and I've read one Joyce. So I think I'm kind of neutral on this one.
Okay.
Thank God there's not a gun to my head yet.
Bulgakov or Nabokov?
I've only read Bulgakov, but I didn't really enjoy either that I read. So I'm going to pick Nabokov.
All right.
Also, Nabokov may or may not have taught Pynchon when Pynchon was at Cornell. So
Interesting. I'm going to go Bulgakov. Russian lit or French lit? I'm going French.
I'm woefully underread on the French lit. So
Spanish lit or English lit?
that's wow.
Yeah, these are supposed to be tough. They're not supposed to be easy answers.
So English being American and like
English,
Europe-
English, anything originally written in English, and
Okay.
Spanish lit, anything originally written in Spanish.
Okay.
So it could be Latin American or
Iberian.
Spain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably Spanish.
I think I'm gonna stick with freedom and go English lit.
Oh, Dude, thank God there's not a gun to my head yet. 'Cause wow, that's a tough.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This one might be even harder. European lit or Latin American lit?
Latin American.
I think I'm going to agree with you on that. Okay. Gun to your heads, this or that.
Jesus Christ.
Coho or Nicholas Sparks?
You know what? I'm going to go Sparks because Call Me Big Ol' Softy. I loved The Notebook, the movie. Maybe.
I've only seen film adaptations, but yeah, I liked them enough, you know?
Yeah. All I know is I've only seen one Nicholas Sparks adaptation. I don't know how many there are, but all I know.
I think he did The Fault in Their Stars.
No, that was John Green.
Oh, never mind. Well, that's the same person as far as I'm concerned.
But I do know that the one Coho book they've tried to adapt or has been adapted into a movie.
I think Verity, maybe.
No, it was one. It ends with us. It starts with us. It was one of those stupid ones. It was a very drawn out, obnoxious legal battle between two of the stars, which did not happen, in, to my knowledge, in any Nicholas Sparks books adaptations. So those won by default.
Okay.
What's next?
Well, I want to look up Nicholas Sparks books really quick.
Oh God.
All right. So The Notebook, which I've seen.
Yeah.
A Walk to Remember, which I have not seen.
Uh-huh.
Those are the only two titles I recognize. So I guess I'm sticking with my pick for Nicholas Sparks, but I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
To my knowledge, Nicholas Sparks has never romanticized being in an abusive relationship the way Colleen Hoover has. So,
okay. James Patterson or John Grisham?
Patterson was the one that
Dan Lawton was like, he sucks.
Yeah, and he's got staffers that write his.
Yeah.
Do we know if John Grisham has ever done that, or
I don't know. I think to me, in my mind, they're the same person. I don't mean disrespect to either of them, but if they take it, that's fine.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick John Grisham just based on the fact that, at least to my knowledge, he does not currently have interns write his novels for him the way James Patterson does.
I trust Dan's judgment there.
Yeah.
Dan Brown or Ayn Rand?
Oh, Dan Brown.
Yeah.
You imagine liking Ayn Rand?
The Alchemist or The Secret?
The Alchemist.
Okay.
At least there's some narrative to that.
Yeah. This is a brutal one. Jordan Peterson or Mark Manson? Mark Manson wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a
Christ, dude. Can I pick the gun?
Andy, you choose. What's that? The original Jack Reacher movie with Tom Cruise. Have you seen that?
I feel like I have.
So it's got Werner Herzog in it, and he plays like this like crime mob boss.
Yeah,
and they have this like crime underling that kind of like screws up, and they're like they want to like punish him, and so Werner Herzog goes into this story, and he's like, when I was in the prison in Siberia, I had to like chew off my fingers to keep the frostbite from spreading and all this stuff. And he's like, show me how committed you are. And like wants the guy to like chew off his own finger. And the guy's like, I can't do it. Yeah. And he goes, always the gun. I never understand.
Yeah. I'm going to pick, was it the authors in general or the respective books?
Well, I mean, theoretically, you have to read the books, their books.
Right,
yeah.
but the question is Peterson or Manson, not 12 Rules of Life or blah, blah, blah.
Well, Jordan's got 12 rules for life, 12 more rules for life, 12 rules about wrestling with God.
I'm going to pick Jordan Peterson.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Because as wrong as he is and as much of an idiot as he is, he is making an attempt to help people improve their life.
I think you could make the same case for Mark Manson.
Yeah, but the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
I mean, it's the worst title
Look
ever,
at you using a swear word in your title. You're so cool and edgy.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if I've ever made this argument on the show before, but I've definitely said this out loud to another person. If you have to read a book to learn how to not give a fuck, you are forever and always going to give at least one fuck.
It's very true. Yes.
I've seen people like I was again joking about how like people use books as like a performative thing as a prop.
Yep.
Like I've seen people posting, oh, I'm sitting by the pool reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a f. Guess what? You missed the point of the book.
Yes, it is definitely. It's like the personal development version of like Infinite Jest, like carrying it around, or Moby Dick. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going with Mark Manson though. Even all that said, he's got a YouTube channel that like is not terrible. I've watched a few of his videos. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. But yeah,
again, like, and that's like I've qualified it. That's my reasoning for that pick. But in a real life scenario, I'm picking the gun. Just shoot me.
Live, laugh, love wall art, or this house runs on caffeine wall art.
Ooh. Like we talking like one piece of wall art in every room of the house?
No, just one.
One?
You have to hang one of these signs in your home.
Okay.
Somewhere prominently where people will see it.
Yeah.
Assuming people come to your home. Which is a pretty big leap.
Yeah. I feel like the number of empty Monster cans that I've not thrown away that are just scattered around my apartment give off this house runs on caffeine, so I think I have to pick Live, Laugh, Love.
Okay.
There's also like there's one. I mean, I shouldn't. There's not like cans everywhere in my house. There's like
I'm going with This House Runs on Caffeine as my choice, but for the same reason because there are Monster Energy cans all over the place. Ebook.
I just feel like if I did that, it'd be a little bit redundant.
Ebook or audiobook?
Ebook.
Okay. Oprah's book club or Reese Witherspoon's book club? I'm going Oprah's on this because she's actually had some pretty good books.
Oprah's had some winners. I don't know of any that have been on Reese Witherspoon's. So
I'm just going to assume they're terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the best one. Self-published Kindle erotica smut or a ghost-written D-list celebrity memoir.
Oh, probably the smut.
I'm going smut.
I was gonna say the smut. I mean, it's probably gonna be it'd be more entertaining.
Yeah.
And at the very least, there's a real person at the other end of it that I can make fun of for being a terrible writer.
Okay.
I mean,
fair enough.
What am I gonna do? Make fun of the AI? That's no fun.
I know. All right. And the final boss of the gun to your head, this or that. Read the entire Fourth Wing series or the entire A Court of Thorn and Roses series.
Which one has less?
You're asking the wrong person.
I think, to my knowledge, there's only been 2 Fourth Wing books.
Okay. So you're defaulting to whichever one has the fewer books in the series. Okay.
I don't think that's I think there's going to be more.
Yeah.
Someone I think sort of made some sort of allusion to this when we asked these questions in the book club last night. But legitimately there was one, and I remember telling you about this. There was one time I was at Barnes and Noble and I was in line to check out, and a woman in front of me, it's her turn. She gets up to the register. I don't think Iron Flame had come out yet. I think this was pre-publication of Iron Flame. But the woman got up to the register and she was like, I want to pre-order the next Fourth Wing book, but I don't know the title.
Nice. Love that.
What are you doing?
Love that.
What are you doing?
Oh, there's so many great books out there, folks. You can read them.
Yeah.
You can go read them. I'm going to also say, actually, you know what? I'm going to go A Court of Thorn and Roses because I think that like Sarah J. Maas is like a terrible person, perhaps. Like there's some controversy around who she is as a human being. And I'm sure that I would not like the books, but I do believe from what I've been told that the writing is probably actually better in A Court of Thorn and Roses. Like I think like Sarah J. Maas is like a legitimate like writer, and Rebecca Yarros is like started as this self-published Kindle smut.
You're probably right about that, but I'm going to again maintain that I would have less to read than you would.
Fair enough. Okay. We're going to do the pretentiousness checklist, and then we're going to go to our community questions, which we'll save for the Life on Books Book Club bonus content. So if you want to see that, you'll have to be a member of our book club. The link is down below. It's on Patreon. We have a ton of additional content over there and a fantastic Discord community. I'm probably most excited about the fact that we had a real college professor teach a guest lecture about hidden gems of science fiction with Krista Zobel. You can go listen to the interview I did with her while Andy was brain tumoring. That was 2 episodes ago. It's a great interview. People loved it. A lot of people were saying this is the best episode you guys have done. I'm like, oh, Andy's going to get a complex. But okay,
it just doubles down. Like, how much does that suck that we did that great episode with her?
I know.
And now it's in the ether.
Yeah, Andy and I interviewed Krista very early on in our podcast.
That was like
career.
Our the third episode we had recorded. Yeah, maybe.
And I up. Okay. So, pretentiousness checklist. You'll have to keep tally on your own here. You're going to crush me on this one, I can tell. Finnegan's Wake.
No.
That's a no for me. Gravity's Rainbow.
Yes, twice.
I've only read half, so I'm a failure. The Recognitions.
Yes.
Okay. I have not read a single page. In Search of Lost Time by Proust.
No.
Okay, me either. Ulysses by Joyce.
It's actually Proust.
Ulysses by Joyce.
No.
Me either. The Man Without Qualities by Robert Musil.
No.
The Tunnel by William Gass. We've both
twice.
read that. Mason and Dixon.
Yes.
Okay. The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy Gentleman by Lawrence Stern.
No.
Have you even heard of that?
I've heard of it.
I've never heard of that.
That's half a point for me.
Okay. Infinite Jest by, okay. Naked Lunch by Burroughs.
Yes.
Okay. I haven't read that one. Dahlgren by Samuel R. Delaney.
No.
Okay. Nightwood by Juna Barnes.
Yes.
Oh, how was that?
It was good. I need to reread it because I missed a lot of it.
It's a modernist lesbian fever dream full of poetic dread.
Yeah.
So seems right up your alley.
Yeah.
The Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa. I think you read some of it, right?
I read like maybe 10, 15 pages.
Oh, okay. That doesn't count.
It was going to be my lunch break book.
Mm.
And then
you were like, this is not a lunch break book.
No, then I got a brain tumor and I missed 6 weeks of work.
You were brain tumoring.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Ada or Ardor, A Family Chronicle by Nabokov.
No.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I haven't read any Nabokov.
Oh, right. Yep. I have not read that either. Froth on the Daydream by Boris Vian.
I haven't heard of that.
Me either.
Or him.
According to this list, it's an absurdist whimsy, slow-paced existential rot. Okay. No idea. William Gaddis's J.R.
Yes.
I've read a third of it. Terra Nostra by Fuentes.
I have not read it, but I have multiple copies. At one point, I owned 3 copies.
Okay. The Savage Detectives by Bolaño.
Yeah.
For both of us. And The Unnameable by Samuel Beckett.
No.
Okay. So how many was that for you?
I didn't keep track.
I told you to keep track.
I thought there was like a general for like the viewers at home.
Well, all right. So
it was more than 5, less than 10.
Yeah, I think it was 4.
I've had more than you.
3.5
is
for me.
all I know for sure.
Maybe 4 if there was 2 halves put together.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Well, who do you think has the more pretentious outlook on life and books?
And why is it me?
And why is it Andy? Let us know your thoughts below. Share your most controversial takes below. And what are we talking about next week, Andy? Moby Dick?
You going to finish by then?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Probably not.
All right, join us next week for a mystery conversation. And if you want to see the rest of our pretentiousness, check the link to our Patreon down
At some
below.
point, we're going to talk about poetry with our friends from across the pond, but
I think that's in July.
it's not July. Dude, I've like my conception of time since
He's been brain tumored. See you next time.